Anyway, shall I crack on with our bit then, Tom? Shall I? Okay. So, as I said, Tom and I have been doing a recent project called Mind the Gap, because within education, there's always been so much debate, so much kind of different standpoints. There is no aspect of education, the science of it, the craft of it, the function, the position in society, its inherent value, the curriculum, the mode of enactment, whatever you want to say, that hasn't been debated. And there's debates around what's right, what's just, what's accurate, what's moral, what's correct. And up until a few months ago, educators would have kind of really hotly defended these standpoints on social media, in staff rooms, at education events. But everything at the moment in lockdown is in a real kind of state of flux, which gives us all a bit of a chance to kind of look again at everything. Because previously there may have been the subtle and not so subtle camps which were assigned to people like, oh, you're a trad, you're a prog, you're like the Montague or the Capulet, the Jet or the Shark of education. But actually, what this pandemic has done is allowed us an opportunity to kind of look at the gaps and think that actually we have a lot more in common than we have that separates us. And we all know that something as precious as the education of the next generation is always going to provoke strong feelings, disagreements, different standpoints about how best to get high quality, the most use out of things, make it most enriching. But sadly, what many people have actually failed to notice before the pandemic is actually we have not been and should not be kind of warring factions or different camps, because we need to remember, and I have a really good prop. Look at my river. This is a high quality piece of glittery blue card. In education, wherever we stand, we're either standing on somewhere along the banks of a river, the same river. Now, this river flows past us every year, year on year, with kind of swathes of pupils that pass through the education system, and it always flows in the same direction. And every single educator, regardless of what you believe, we all want to harness the power of the river, the potential of the river, the beauty of the river. And surely, when we acknowledge that we all want the same thing, that actually we have more in common than we have. That's different, because nobody wants this river to flow backwards. Nobody wants to pollute the river, diminish the river's potential, or let it become really dry and barren. So, as a profession, and partly some of the work that Tom and I have been doing, is about looking at not separate sides of the river. Now, if this works, I will really be surprised, because I have a little crop here. So on our river, I know, I said, there's no end to my talent, Tom. No end to my talent. So what we need to do is not see the gap between the river and separate standpoints, but actually, here we have, strangers from my children's toys, here we have two people either side of the educational debate. Actually, what we need to do, oh God, I've got to move my phone, is to build an educational bridge without the red man falling on.
Don't let them all fall in and drown. That'll spoil the whole analogy.
No, I saved him. So we have connected the two different standpoints, built a bridge. However, it's not just about blending things and becoming murky. We need to build a bridge between our different approaches to ethos, our beliefs, our understanding, but also be mindful of, now get this, the quality of your tools and materials, Tom. I bet you've not got a plastic hammer in what you're going to say. Because, for example, we may think that on one side of the bank is kind of the science of learning, and that may appear that that's one camp, but actually that needs to sit on the kind of the nurturing relationships and the child-centered approaches of what could potentially be seen as another camp. Because without actually understanding young people and building positive relationships, we can't build any learning, regardless of the science. So that's kind of the first bridge to be built. And then understanding that it doesn't matter how much science you know, if you don't know how and when to replicate it, because you haven't got an appreciation of pupils as individuals and how they learn, then nothing's going to work. So teaching is two things then. Teaching is a science, teaching is an art, and no single discipline or side of the bank will equip us with the skills and the knowledge to be able to produce, wait for it, educational magic. Because our classrooms, you're impressed with my wand?
I am. I don't know about everyone else, but I am.
Easily pleased, Tom, easily pleased. And our classrooms are, I'm going to tilt this up a little bit now so you can actually see the top of my head. Oh, God, I think I've cut myself off.
No, you're there, you're there. Keep going.
Something's come up. Minecraft.
You're good.
I don't even play
good.
Minecraft. Right. So, classrooms are magical places, and in the lockdown recently, what it's seen as crave is community, collegiality, and contact, and all of those are the key aspects of teaching and learning that we miss and that the children miss. So, my view, and our kind of mind the gap standpoint, is that education is not about finding and plugging kind of missing gaps like that. It's actually developing a community of learners, developing a community of teacher learners, and a community that works tirelessly together to harness the power of my little blue river down here, to harness the power, the dynamism, and the wonder of our profession and our learners within it. And by talking to educators across the globe from different sides of different rivers, metaphorical and actual, what I really hope is that you and I, Tom, get to contribute to the debate about education, about what works, what's transferable across the sector, what's transferable across age ranges, phases, and actually how we can mind the gap and be mindful of the gap. So that's my take on it, Tom. It's over to you, my darling.
I think it's good. So for me, it's been really amazing. So I think of myself as a kind of secondary physics teacher, you know, who's done some other stuff. So that's my perspective. And so I'm always thinking when people are talking, you know, how would this help me teach physics better, you know, and Emma's, you know, brings all this perspective and lots of early years influences. And there are, you know, there's different ways of us thinking about the same challenges. And I do think we have this sort of need to think the best of each other and to be collaborative and collective. But at the same time, there are some pretty tough questions to answer. And sometimes I think when I'm watching some teachers struggling or teaching things that are going so well, the spirit's there, but the technical things that they're doing aren't effective. And so we do need to think about that. And so when I'm interviewing with Emma, our guests, we're up for a bit of a challenge, and I think it's a healthier environment than some of the Twitter debates you get into. So we're sort of saying, okay, so why do you think
red or yellow?
What would that look like in practice? You know, if someone is saying it's all about the passion and the spirit, I'm saying, okay, but what does that mean teachers would do differently then? How would you teach adding fractions more effectively? You know, but if someone is sort of going too far down this sort of very technical approach, sometimes, you know, we pull back and say, okay, but what does that look like at the level of the spirit of a system or whatever? So we do need to be technical and forensic in some of our thinking. And often there are some very practical things people can do differently to secure deeper learning. And one of our recent guests, so Peter DeWitt, he's someone who, this is where the transatlantic aspect comes in. So he's huge in America. He's wrote this blog a couple of weeks ago about six reasons why kids aren't turning up to online learning. And it's published on EdWeek, which he writes for. It's had 1 million views. It's an extraordinary scale of his reach.
Tom's
so
still not got over this. Please visit Tom's blog. He's not got over he's had 1 million.
I'm pretty proud of my blog stats, but he's just like, so he's this sort of giant. But you talk to him, and his whole thing recently is about what he calls instructional leadership. So getting leaders of schools to focus on how do we lead schools to focus on teaching more effectively. And his experience is a lot of school leaders he meets are a bit removed from that. They can be strongly administrative, and some of the job roles in the US are strongly administrative, and the teaching side is kind of delegated down. And he's thinking of a model, a framework for getting school leaders to be more close to the front line. So that was interesting. So just hearing that's different perspective from the US to or a similar perspective was really interesting. And Richard Gerver, you know, he's someone who's, you know, famous primary school leader who's gone on to sort of be a big speaker. We had quite a good debate. So I'm looking forward to people watching that and hearing how we kind of wrestle with different perspectives, but kind of coming to some finding common ground, which is so rare, isn't it? I often find before this, I'm just escaping from a potential row with Andrew Adonis on Twitter. He replied to one of my tweets. He actually very rude to Lord Adonis because that's
step away from that one.
But when you're facing someone, you have to look them in the eye, even through a camera. When you can't just be rude. You have to say, well, okay, so how do we debate without polarizing? And I think that's so refreshing. It's kind of a discipline which Twitter debates don't really facilitate very well. So hopefully Mind the Gap will be something people...
Oh, Tom, mention the mailbag. Tom, mention the mailbag. Mailbag.
Yeah, the mailbag. So if you follow our tweets over the next couple of weeks, you'll see the hashtag that we're going to develop for the mailbag. And then there's a feature where we answer questions. So that'd be really good to get people involved with that and helping us, maybe invite different guests in if you've got suggestions or... to answer questions from our different perspectives. So hopefully Emma and I represent a good sort of spread of perspectives which allow these issues to get treated in a rounded way. So thanks for inviting us on.
Thank you very much for having us. Lovely to see you, Tom.
Thank you very much, both of you. Do you know what you're saying, that we do have, especially during this, we do have more in common, don't we? Than we don't. We do need to come together as educators, especially when everybody else is bashing us at the moment. So we really need to stick together. Emma, I talked to you about the budget on your props there. That must have blown all.
Oh, it's amazing. It was all of a 5-minute. Kids, where's the bridge? Where's the bridge? Where's the blue paper?
What? Are you telling me that that's children's toys and not some Steven Spielberg CGI?
I particularly liked it when the red man fell off the table.
I was getting worried then that the whole thing would collapse on itself and you'd have this sort of disastrous thing of, drowning in the river and the whole message would be lost, but it worked.
Thank God I had a practice. I had it all lined up. If I hadn't have had my practice, as Sam Strickland would say, fail to plan, plan to fail. That's his mantra.
Well, the little red man, he didn't mind the gap, did he? So.
No, he didn't. He went right off the side.
You noticed my silent plug for your friend of mine.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's cats.
So we have this game of whose book are we going to have in the background as a silent plug. So
I like it.
Sam's online.
Cat Howard, stop talking about well-being. See how generous I am, Graham. I don't even plug my own book. I just plug other people's. Cat Howard, stop talking about well-being. Best book on well-being ever.
Thank you. Thanks, Em. Thanks, Tom. Thanks both for joining us.
Thanks, Graham. Lovely to see you.
Bye, everybody.
You know about your mailbag. I'm interested in that.
Oh,
yeah,
what
great.
you want to do is tweet a question that you would like to be debated on the show with the hashtag Ask Tom and Emma.
Right. Are you sure that's not been taken before?
No, we
do that later on.
check. Or you can just post it to either my feed or Tom's feed and it'll get to us. And then hopefully your question can be one of the questions that we use in the show.
Okay. Thank you very much. Cheers again, Em. It's always a pleasure. It's a lovely day. And thank you very much.
Graham, as well. Bye-bye.
Yeah, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Tom.